Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of Synchronicity. My guest today is nobody. I have no guest today. Can you believe that? It's fitting. My favorite number, FYI, is 13, so I don't know what this says, how I view it myself, but I'm happy that I'm my guest today. So how am I going to interview myself? I'm not. I could do a thing where I ask questions and then I answer them, but that's weird and just even a little too narcissistic, even for me. But what I do want to do is give some recommends, things I've been enjoying, podcasts, music, shows, documentaries, stuff that you may enjoy. I'll do books at some other point. Truth be told, I'm looking forward to getting some reading done in Jamaica because I have not gotten a lot of reading done, and I really like to read. And when I don't read, I feel like there's something missing in my life, just a little bit. So I'll have some books for the next episode. Hopefully I read some good ones over vacation. So yeah, I just wanted to give an overview of some stuff that you may have not caught wind of as of yet. And maybe you have, and maybe you like these things too. Maybe we can talk about it. I don't know. So yeah, let's start with podcasts. Okay. Not to toot MindPod Network's own horn, because not only am I the owner, I'm also a member. There's been couple podcasts here that have been fantastic that have come out over the past couple of weeks that I think if you haven't checked them out, definitely check them out. So the first is Danny Goldberg. Do you guys know Danny Goldberg has a podcast called Rock and Rolls on MindPod Network? Maybe my favorite podcast on MindPod Network. Don't tell anyone that. But really, really an excellent show. Danny's a very interesting and cool guy in his own right, but also has some excellent guests. The most recent episode he did is with Rosanna Arquette, who you may know as an actress. Outside of that, just cool person. The interview, she sounds incredibly down to earth, has really a very refreshing outlook on life, especially for someone who works in a field, in Hollywood that doesn't have the best reputation on maybe having good outlooks on life. But yeah, just a really great interview. There's a cool part at the end where they're talking about angels. It's cool. It's just a really cool episode. So definitely check that out. Another episode on MindPod Network that I think you guys should check out if you haven't already, although I imagine many of you have, is an episode of Jack Cornfield's Heart Wisdom with Dustin Marshall, who runs Feral Audio, and Duncan Trussell, who has podcasts on Feral Audio. This episode is very important. I don't have another way to say that. It's pretty heady, dark stuff in there. Dustin is incredibly candid about suicide, depression, and how to kind of navigate those waters, especially in a spiritual context. And it's just a great episode to hear. If you know anyone or have experienced any type of mental health issues, I really, really recommend listening to it. Lots of love and thanks to everyone involved getting that together, because I think that's one of the best things that's come out on MindPod Network. So yeah, definitely check those out. So I'm not just going to toot MindPod Network's horn. I'm going to toot other people's horns. This is getting... Now it's sounding weird, but I am going to promote another podcast. Do you guys know Zach Leary? Zach Leary, awesome guy, happens to be the son of Timothy Leary. Not important for anything I'm going to mention. He had Pete Holmes. He has a podcast too, Zach Leary. So does Pete, but Zach has a podcast called It's All Happening. And he had Pete Holmes from You Made It Weird. He had Pete on, and they have a great discussion about life, work, spirituality. You find out I didn't know really that Pete had come from a pretty evangelical background. I knew that there was something involved there, but he was about to be a minister, was super into it, and just if you know Pete or follow any of his stuff, had his own show. He's getting a new pilot with Judd Apatow. Just a cool dude. Really, just a great episode. It's just, for me personally, the reason I love these episodes and these types of shows is it shows people who are quote unquote, in the normal world, just really having refreshing outlooks on themselves, the world, and just, what the hell we're doing on this planet and why we're here. So always fun to hear candid and transparent conversations about that. Speaking of Zach Leary, as you know, and I mentioned in the last podcast, David Bowie died earlier in the week, last week actually. And a lot of people who are big David Bowie fans, myself included, were extremely moved. And he was just a very, I don't really know why, but a very spiritual person for a lot of people. And Zach Leary actually put together some thoughts on David Bowie and put them up as a little clip, which I think it's a nice little produced piece. It's pretty cool. FYI, all of these things, you think I would make you go find them on your own. They're all on this episode's page. So if you go to mindpodnetwork.com, probably be on the front page, but if you go to mindpodnetwork.com/Noah, the first thing that'll show up on the top left there will be this episode, and you'll be able to click into all of these things so you don't have to do any work going to find them. So you're welcome. Okay, so speaking of music, we're talking David Bowie. Let's check out some music if you're not a David Bowie fan. Clearly, Ziggy Stardust, definitely check that out. But one of my favorite David Bowie albums, Hunky Dory. Start there. Truly one of my... I just think it's such a great piece. Just such a good album. Back when albums were albums. So definitely check that out. Another thing that I'm traveling tomorrow, and I don't like flying. And I used to get really drunk before I flew, but that wasn't so fun because I don't really like drinking. So now I've took a weed brownie once before I flew, and that was okay. And the cross-country trip, then I take like a half a Xanax now or a quarter Xanax, and that chills me out, and it's okay. But this is just really an aside, all of that stuff. I don't like flying. You like flying? I don't know. I think you're weird if you like flying. It's weird. I don't understand how the planes stay up. Doesn't make sense. And I know physically it makes sense. It's just I don't like the concept of being that high up. It's a control thing, right? I don't know. Anyway. When I travel, I always go back to the days when I first really started traveling a lot, like at college, going around to look at places, visiting people. I was really into what was then called progressive trance music, which sounds really stupid now, hearing the genre name. But what it was people like Sasha and Digweed, Sander Kleinenberg. These names probably mean very little to the majority of you, but there's one album in particular, which is my favorite travel album, which is Sasha and Digweed's Northern Exposure, Volume 1. Awesome, awesome, awesome. You know what? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open with that for this episode. So you'll already have heard it. If you're wondering what that was at the beginning, that's what that was. One of my favorite albums, just like a very chilled out, cool, nice mid-90s electronic album. I love it. And it's especially good for planes. So really good. If you like that, again, found a version of that on SoundCloud. I don't think they sell that anymore because it was on a mixtape. But I found a SoundCloud version of it, so you can click into that and listen to that if you like it, maybe even download it. And then the third music thing, I'm going to Jamaica, Bob Marley, right? I mean, everyone loves Bob Marley. Every person, who's ever smoked weed and turned on Bob Marley at any point is probably a fan. I'm a uber fan of Bob Marley. I was one of the weird white people who had dreadlocks for 6 years. Not just because of Bob Marley, but yeah, really into that whole thing. So start with if you're not really into Bob Marley, you just know the hits. Start with Kaya, one of my favorite albums. Starts with Easy Skankin', just a hell of an album. Okay, couple other things. Let's move into the visual medium. Documentaries. Here's not documentaries necessarily. Well, yeah, they are. They're both documentaries. They're films. I saw something on YouTube, which I thought was amazing a couple weeks ago, which was a documentary on Charles Bukowski called Born Into This. If you're a Bukowski fan, then you don't need to hear anything else. Go check it out. It's on YouTube. Again, there's a link on this page to this episode, but it's like an hour and 50-minute documentary on Bukowski. There's an excellent part of it where they interview all these people like Sean Penn, Tom Waits, Bono. But Tom Waits reads a Bukowski poem called The Laughing Heart, which we featured on MindPod Network from this documentary. And it's really awesome. So if you're a Bukowski fan, check that out. If you don't know Bukowski, go read some of the, I mean, it's not for everyone, but go read some of his, either some of his novels or poetry, just for one of my favorite authors, for both of those, for novels and poetry. Just totally, totally cool and awesome. And that documentary, what a YouTube, amazing. And then the other thing I was watching is Making a Murderer, and now it's kind of passe. I think most people have seen it. That holy shit. If you want to lose faith in the criminal justice system completely, let's say there was a shred you were hanging on to, watch Making a Murderer. I have no idea if these guys did it or not. I don't think the Brendan Dassey did it, but yeah, man, not good. Not good. That's on Netflix. And just FYI, if for what it's worth, this is how I would consume media if I were you. Cut your cable. I cut it a year and a half, 2 years ago. Best decision ever. I pay for Netflix. I pay for Hulu. I do Amazon Prime. I'm good to go. Can see vast majority of whatever I want to see. So that's my advice to you. Okay. Some shows that I've been enjoying quite recently. Mozart in the Jungle. Really, it's starting to get some Golden Globe buzz. I think it's just a great show. Really good. I like it. I was never a classical musician, but as a former musician, not former, I shouldn't say former. I don't really play that much music anymore. It's sad. But as a musician, it's cool to see the true story in some way. You know, it's like drug, sex, and classical music in New York City. What's not to like? Really good acting, great show. The second season just wrapped up. Mirabai Bush, who is a previous guest on the podcast, recommended it to me, and she did not serve me wrong. Great show. Really, really, really great show. Okay, another comedy show that I'm really enjoying, Man Seeking Woman. Just one of these kind of under the radar shows that is fantastic. It's on FX. And I told you to cut cable. I don't know. You're gonna have to figure it out some way. Anyway, but it is a really good show. Eric Andre is in it. He's a side character, which led me when I was picking out the show. It's a good show. It's about like dating and, like struggles between modern relationships, which are complicated by technology and other social circumstances, as I'm sure they have been. It has been for millennia. But the show just does a really good job of like taking situations and making them kind of ridiculous. And it's just a really good show. Check it out. Man Seeking Woman. But Eric Andre, right? Eric Andre, one of my favorite people, the Eric Andre Show. If you don't know that show, I estimate very few of you will actually enjoy it. That being said, such a good show. I think it's coming back for the 4th season sometime soon. It's Eric Andre and Hannibal Buress, and it's just insane. It's basically chaos in show form. I don't know how else to describe it. I put a link to it, some clips from it on this podcast page. And yeah, okay. Last thing, I want to talk about one show that I cannot understand. And I just finished it, and I won't give any spoilers away, but it's this show, The Man in the High Castle. So it's, I believe it's Philip K. Dick, right? Am I making that up? He wrote a novel called The Man in the High Castle, which dealt with the reality where what if the Nazis and Japan had won World War II and what that reality would be like. So cool, like, right? Amazing premise. Ridley Scott is an executive producer, like all of the hallmarks of a show that sounds pretty interesting. So I watched it, and gotta be honest, I didn't really love the first 5-6 episodes. Why did I keep watching? I don't know. I kind of like the premise. There was enough there to keep me coming back, but the acting, not so good. Plot, really slow to develop. But I was waiting for a payoff. And I watched the final episode last night, and I have no fucking idea what happened. And like, I usually know. I'm not one of those people who, like, when movies are on or shows on, like, what happened? Like, what? Like, I get it. I usually follow the plot pretty well. I have no fucking idea what this show is about. So if anyone knows what the show is about, what is happening, and it's not even like Lost. I love Lost. I get if we're purposely meant to be confused and, red herrings here and there. I just don't know what's going on in The Man in the High Castle. I can't understand it. I don't get it. So please, if someone has watched this, explain it to me, because it's kind of bothering me that I just have no idea what the show is about, and I watched 10 episodes of it. Imagine how that feels. Okay. We've come to the end of this episode. Not that long, not that short. I'm going to be back in a couple of weeks. I have some really interesting guests on the docket. Kelly Carlin is going to be coming on in early February. So is David Nickturn. I have a couple of other people who I will be happy to announce soon. So just wanted to say thanks for listening. As always, I really, really, really do appreciate it. The reviews have been coming in on iTunes. I think there's like 15, 16 of them now. And amazing. Thank you so much for all the nice things people have been saying. It really means a lot. I can't tell you, on days where I'm busy and I'm like, oh shit, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I have work to do on the podcast. Just reading those reviews alone keeps me going. And, it's not really for me. I like to share people who I think are interesting and can be a benefit to anyone who would be listening to this. So again, thank you for listening. And yeah, I'll see you next week. No, I won't see you next week. That was a lie. I'll see you in 2 weeks. I'm going to be in Jamaica. So I'll see you then. Bye-bye.